Vex Kaylon stood before the Syndicate board, the soft glow of the holoscreens casting shadows on his blue-grey skin. His cybernetic implants glinted, a testament to the technology that enhanced his already formidable mind. Around him, the board members murmured, their faces a mix of greed and excitement. "Gentle beings," Vex began, his voice smooth and measured. "The Solari have long been viewed as primitive, scattered across resource-rich star systems. Our algorithms predict an easy conquest." Admiral Thross Mandek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His massive four-armed frame seemed almost too large for the sleek, metallic chair. "Director, have we truly assessed their capabilities? These people are connected through something they call the Neural Nexus. We don't know what we're dealing with." X waved a dismissive hand. "Elder Zara Chen-Okafor and her people may claim to wield some mystical connection, but data is data. They have outdated technology, no organized military force. It's a business equation. We strike here." He pointed to a flickering holomap pinpointing a Solari outpost, "and the rest will capitulate." "It's not just numbers, Vex. We're talking about lives," Thross replied, his voice deep and resonant, a hint of concern lacing his words. "We could be making a grave mistake." Vex's eyes narrowed. "Mistakes are only made when one fails to calculate the variables accurately. This is a strategic move that will solidify our dominance in the Kepler Spiral." As the board members nodded, their excitement building, the weight of Thross's skepticism hung heavy in the air, but he remained silent. He'd learned that questioning Vex too much could jeopardize his own position. Hours later, the Crimson Syndicate's fleet loomed over Retheri 9, a seemingly tranquil Solari outpost. Its surface shimmered with rivers of iridescent blue, dotted with settlements that resembled quaint villages rather than military strongholds. Vex stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Crimson Vortex, watching the tactical display with a confident gleam in his eye. "Prepare the landing crafts," he ordered, his voice steady. "Commence the operation." Thross stood beside him, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the screen. "I still don't like this, Vex." "Your feelings are noted, Admiral," Vex replied coolly. "But we must act swiftly. The element of surprise is on our side." As the landing crafts descended, Vex felt a rush of anticipation. The conquest would be swift, a mere formality. On the surface, Elder Zara Chen-Okafor watched the sky darken with the silhouettes of the Syndicate ships. Her wrinkled hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained calm. "We must unite. The Nexus is our strength." A group of Solari leaders around her nodded, their expressions grave. Captain Jin Nakamura, a young commander with fierce determination in his eyes, stepped forward. "Will they understand? They see us as nothing more than obstacles." Zara's gaze pierced through him. "They underestimate us, Jin. That will be their downfall. Activate the Nexus." Back on the Crimson Vortex, chaos erupted as the landing craft began to touch down. Thross's instincts kicked in. Vex were receiving unusual signals. Suddenly, the entire fleet shuddered. Vex's eyes widened as alarms blared loudly, filling the air with a cacophony of warnings. "What is happening? Systems are going offline. We're losing control," Thross shouted, his voice rising in urgency. The bridge crew scrambled, fingers dancing over panels, but it was too late. The Solari outposts, once thought defenseless, were now glowing with a strange energy. "Director!" a crew member yelled. "All Solari factions are responding simultaneously. They're coordinating. Cut them off!" Vex barked, but the command fell on deaf ears. The Neural Nexus pulsed with a force they couldn't comprehend. Jin stood among the gathered leaders, their forms illuminated by the radiant energy of the Nexus. The air crackled with power, and the connection felt like a heartbeat shared across the galaxy. "Now!" Jin shouted. "We strike back." With a collective will, the Solari faction surged in response. Ships of every size and shape, once scattered, united in a whirlwind of colors. They poured into the sky, forming a blockade around the Syndicate fleet. "Retreat!" Vex shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "We must regroup." Thross's eyes darted across the screens. "They're everywhere. It's a coordinated attack." Vex cursed under his breath as the realization hit him. This was no mere skirmish. It was war. "Admiral, we need to..." Before he could finish, an explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered and alarms screamed, drowning out his voice. Thross gripped the console, his muscles tightening as he braced against the next wave of attacks. "Hold steady," Thross roared, his warrior instincts taking over. "Prepare all weapons." Back on Rethery 9, Jin felt the rush of adrenaline. The Nexus pulsed stronger, fueling their resolve. "They think they can crush us like ants. Let them feel our unity." "Together," Zara's voice rang out. "Together we are unstoppable." The Solari fleet surged forward, a relentless wave crashing against the unprepared Syndicate forces. The Crimson Vortex shook violently as another explosion rocked the ship. Vex's mind raced, calculating their dwindling options. "Get me a direct line to the fleet. We need to regroup." Thross, face set in a grimace, turned to him. "It's too late, Vex. We're outnumbered. We should have listened to the signs." "Shut up," Vex snapped, the cold facade cracking. "We can turn this around. We can still win. Winning isn't an option anymore," Thross shouted back. "We're being hunted." The bridge crew worked frantically, but the chaos was overwhelming. Vex felt the walls closing in, his carefully laid plans crumbling into dust. Outside, the Solari forces pushed forward, the Nexus amplifying their strength. Jin led the charge, the thrill of battle igniting his spirit. "Press the attack," he commanded, watching as Syndicate ships were engulfed in flames. "Look," a Solari pilot yelled, pointing to the skies. "Their flagship is falling." Jin's heart raced. "We can break them, for our home." As the Crimson Vortex began to list, Vex's final calculations fell apart. He clutched the command console, panic now consuming him. "Admiral, we must!" But Thross had already made his decision. "Get to the escape pods. We're finished here." Vex felt the heat of anger rise within him. "You're abandoning our mission?" "Survival is the mission now," Thross replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. The ship shuddered again, and Vex's resolve began to waver. He turned toward the escape pods, the weight of his failure heavy in his chest. "Everyone to the pods!" Thross shouted, pushing crew members toward the exits. As Vex stumbled back, the last shred of his ego shattered. Jin felt the tide of battle shift, the Syndicate forces faltering. The Nexus connections surged, binding them together. "Keep pushing," he yelled, adrenaline coursing through him. "We can end this." The Solari fleet roared as they pressed their advantage, the cries of victory echoing through the void. On the Crimson Vortex, alarms blared as the ship began its descent into chaos. Vex reached the escape pod, the realization of his failure weighing heavily on him. "Get in," Thross urged, urgency in his voice. Vex hesitated, glancing back at the screens displaying the flaring destruction of their empire. "This isn't over," he snapped, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. Thross gripped Vex's shoulder. "It is over. We must survive to fight another day." With a final, reluctant glance at the chaos unfolding, Vex stepped into the pod. As the pod jettisoned away from the Crimson Vortex, Jin watched the flagship spiral down, engulfed in flames. The thrill of victory washed over him, but he knew the fight was far from over. "Together," he murmured, heart pounding, "we will rebuild." In the void, Vex's escape pod drifted away from the wreckage, a haunting reminder of his miscalculations. "Director," Thross said, breaking the silence. "What now?" Vex's eyes narrowed, the cold calculation returning. "We regroup. We learn. The Solari may have won this battle, but the war is far from over." The pod floated into the darkness, leaving behind the remnants of an empire built on greed. As the echoes of unity resonated across the galaxy, the pod floated into the darkness, leaving behind the remnants of an empire built on greed. As the echoes of unity resonated across the galaxy, In the vast expanse of space, two truths had been proven: that power without understanding breeds destruction, and that unity, however humble its origin, can topple even the mightiest of empires. Back on Rethery 9, Jim stood among his people, watching the last of the Syndicate debris burn up in the atmosphere like falling stars. The Neural Nexus still hummed with shared consciousness, but now it carried something new: hope. Elder Zara approached him, her weathered face bearing a smile that spoke of hard-won wisdom. "The galaxy has changed today," she said softly. "But change brings new challenges. We must remain vigilant, remain united." Jim nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Victory was sweet, but it was also responsibility. The Solari had proven their strength, but now they would need to prove their wisdom in the trials that lay ahead.